Hey YouTube, what's crack-lacking?
Okay, so this hopefully is the last of the footage of the bike ride at Denver. Like I said, I couldn't actually get it into 2 videos, and I've had to do 3, which is actually quite good because it's actually giving me a little bit more content. This is the last section, so this will take us from the actual Estes National Park back to, not all the way back to Denver. I don't think you really want to see all the stuff on the interstate, but this is the actual section where something happened, and you'll see in a little minute. Alright.
Okay, so here we go again with a little bit of commentary onto what's happening. So I mentioned obviously at the end of the last video that we'd stopped to have a look at the lookout point at the Estes Park, and obviously as I got back on the bike, you know, I thought everything was done, did my normal checks, but I'd completely forgotten to fasten up the chin strap on my helmet. And I've got quite a small head, so most of my helmets are actually quite a small helmet, and they're actually quite tight, and I don't know if that would have any relevance over what happens next or not, but it just goes to show that it just takes that little momentary lapse of concentration to forget something simple. And you know, with something like a chin strap as well, you can't see it. There's nowhere that you can kind of check. You know, if you're not wearing your gloves, that's apparent. If you're not wearing your helmet, hopefully that's quite apparent. Actually forgetting to do up something like a chin strap, and I felt like an idiot. So, you know, as we was driving along, I could feel something flapping, and it was around this point that I'd figured out, that's what it is. And it was, you know, it was annoying, and I was getting to the point where I was thinking, right, I really need to sort this out. Coupled with the fact that, and I'd already said, I was having some serious issues with my actual visor steaming up. I had very, very little visibility, and I'm sure you can notice up in front, and you know, Andy and Mark, obviously in a car, completely oblivious, they don't have the same issues in the rain, they are motoring along at this point. There was a period, and I'll show it in a bit, where we actually stopped, and I kind of said to them, look, you need to slow down, we're going downhill, I cannot slow down at the same rate that you guys are, the spray is killing me, I cannot see through the visor. And you know, they replied to me, oh, you know, we're doing the speed limit. No, you're not. You know, we're hitting bends that have got a maximum speed of 35, we're hitting them at 50, 60 miles an hour. And again, I completely understand why. You know, in a car, it's a completely different experience than it is in a bike. So, you know, at this point, like I said, I'm kind of taking it as cautious as possible. I'm trying to catch up where I can when it's safe to do so, but at the same time as well, I'm really struggling with not being able to see anything. You know, I just could not see through my visor whatsoever. So every few minutes I'm stopping and you know, trying to clear it. And this is important. If you look at how close I just went to the yellow line then, it's because the bend creeps up on me and I'm in the middle of clearing my visor. That's important because of this moment right now. So obviously as we start to go round this bend, you know, again I'm moving out to the right hand side again, and again at this point I can clearly remember it, I'm starting to clear my visor now, and then obviously you see the chevrons, and I am way too far over at this point, completely, you know, unprepared, got completely messed up, off the line where I've hit the skids, and that's the moment. And it could have been so much worse. Let's have a look at it in a little bit more of a slow motion. Obviously the camera is on the left hand handlebar, and it's quite far out on the left hand handlebar, so it obviously gives you some indication of just how close this was. To get it back on track, I eased off the throttle, I didn't use the brakes, and I just leant the bike in, and luckily the inertia, and by taking off the throttle, managed to bring me back over to the right side of the road. Just one more time here, and again, exactly the same thing. As soon as you go off that line, as soon as you end up where there's been no water cleared, the bike just slides out on you. And again, I was in the wrong position, I was cleaning my visor. I'm just lucky, it could have been a lot worse. And going back to the US, they very rarely change their approach. They drive exactly the same way. So at this point, understandably, I'm a little bit, I'm shaken up. So you know, you can see the distance between Andy and Matt. They had no idea what had happened. They wouldn't have even have seen this accident. I was so far behind them that they had no idea. So at this point now, it's on the straight. I'm trying to catch up to them, and I'm signalling them with my lights to try and tell them I need to stop. Because I'd seen there's like a few little stopping points that come up along the way, and that's what I'm trying to do at the moment. I'm trying to catch up with them with enough time to basically say, hey guys, you need to stop. I need a minute. yeah, I was a little bit shaken up, understandably. Plus, as well, I needed to sort out my helmet, and that's what's important. You know, God forbid if something did happen, I'm not sure what the consequences would have been because I didn't have the chin strap connected, and it doesn't bear thinking about. We're just going to move on from that. You know, chalk it down to experience. And you know, as you ride a bike, you have these moments that happen. And I went back to the start of it. It's what makes riding a bike such a good thing. You know, you have that freedom. You know, that you are out there, you're in the elements, you can absolutely see what's happening. You know, you can feel it. You have that instant connection with the road, with the cars, with the traffic. So I think it's not too far from here now that I managed to finally flag them down and say, hey, look guys, we need to stop. And yeah, I think you can see the turn signal going on there, and off we go onto the side. And I will spare everybody the video of the conversation that happened, but it wasn't a pretty conversation for obvious reasons. I was a little bit upset and a little bit shaken up. So I took a few minutes at this point just to regroup and compose myself and shout at them before we decided to move on further on up the down the road to get back again, basically. But yeah, that was definitely a moment that hopefully will not happen again. And you know, like I said, you chalk it down to experience and you move on from it. So obviously now, after stopping, composing myself, having a change of underwear, and you know, making sure that I've got everything set up, we decided to move on again down the hill. And there's me completely forgetting, getting on, thinking, oh, that's where I need to go. No, actually, you drive on the right side of the road, Neil. So you can tell I was just at this point. It's very rare that I count down the time for something to end, because I think that you're kind of wishing your life away, but God, this ride was bad. It really was. I think I said it before on some of the other videos. If I actually was going out in the morning just to the shop and booking a bike, I wouldn't have rode that day because of the rain. And you know, now I've actually seen these shops as well firsthand. I think that's what I'd do in the future. I'd find a local one, go in, hey, what bikes have you got available that I could hire today? Because I think they've got a huge amount of bikes available. It's not like they've only got like one or two. They had 50, 60 Harley Davidsons parked outside, and you know, there was definitely not going to be a shortage unless they were customer bikes or something. You know, I never actually asked. I'm assuming that they was available for hire. You just never know. So bearing in mind that obviously I told them, look, you need to slow down on the bends, I'd just had the near-death experience, and you could see that, yeah, they decided to slow down. No, they didn't. Can't fault them. They're in a car. They probably didn't think anything of it. I think if they actually tried to ride a bike or understood the fact that two wheels and the effective cohesion of wheels on tarmac with water on is greatly reduced. But maybe this goes back to what I was saying about being in a car and you almost feel disconnected. I can understand how people get into really bad accidents in cars because they don't adapt the driving style for the conditions. Because for most of the time, the car will give you an indication right when it's at the wrong point. You know, with modern cars, it takes a lot for them to start stepping out, and at that point most people are done. You know, they won't be able to recover from an issue when it steps out at the speeds that people go. I had as well behind me, I'd had a little bit of traffic was behind me. There was a Mercedes who was close, so whenever they were straight and there was the ability to get back on the throttle, I was definitely doing that to just try and make sure I wasn't slowing down the traffic. The problem was when it came to the bends, I had to go down to that 30-35 mile an hour to make sure that I was able to get round them. All in all, though, I'm still going to say fantastic place. I mean, just beautiful. You can see little bits of it that's outside of the cloud cover. Gorgeous scenery. I imagine when the weather's nicer, I've been told that you can see elk and deer and you know, all kinds of wonderful wildlife on the actual trail. So annoyed that we couldn't get up and do the actual top road, but it would have been suicidal. Forget the fact that I was cold. You saw what just happened. I don't want to think. You know, it was the right decision to make, and that's where being sensible with the conditions is what's important. all in all, just reflections on the trip. I'm really glad that I did it. It was great to have the opportunity to ride in America. It's something that I've wanted to do for a long time. The bike I chose, yep, it was a great bike. It was lovely, absolutely beautiful, very, very easy to ride, very balanced. And yeah, the weather was just the factor. But, we got to stop at the Stanley Hotel. We had a couple of coffees. We had a nice lunch there. And it was good. It was good to just do something. I mean, the choices were we could have done something in Denver, but we had the rest of the week in the actual Denver town, and we would have, got bored very quickly spending a full day there. It was definitely one of those right things or right decisions to make. So at this point, I think we've probably seen enough of the trip down. It's very similar. What I didn't do is show you a little bit of the city when we drove out. So this is back at the actual start of the day, and you can see obviously the weather when we set off was fine. It was a little bit of spitting, which is why I decided to do it. But this is actually downtown Denver. We've just come out of the hotel, and we're actually heading now out of downtown Denver to head to the interstate, to pick up the interstate to take us to the Estes National Park. Reflections on Denver as a town, very strange place. Didn't dislike it at all. So this bit here that we're just going through here is like a long mall. It's an outdoor mall, and they have a bus that runs, it's a pedestrian walkway, but they actually have a bus that runs the length of Union Station, which is to the right, all the way up to the left. I don't know what's at the left, but there is actually a train that you can pick up at the left as well. Lots of restaurants, typical American fare and so on, lots of shopping. We spent quite a bit of time walking around this mall, either going to the left and heading up to the top end of it where Hard Rock Cafe is at the top end, all the way down to the bottom right, which you go down to then pick up the ballpark. And you'll see a bit of that area as well on the next video, which is when we did Oktoberfest, which was a fun night, but I'll save that for the next video. One thing about the downtown Denver is it's very much a one-way system, so you look at each light, you end up spending quite a bit of time waiting at each intersection whilst they clear most of the traffic, and you can just see there on the left the actual mall and the pedestrian area. But yeah, it was fun. It was good actually to get used to the bike. Lots of turning, lots of small gentle riding. It gets you used to clutch control on the bike and the balance and the weightiness of the bike, which is absolutely what you need, especially when you're riding any new bike. It takes you a little bit of time to get used to it. You're not going to jump on any bike and immediately start speeding. You've got to get used to the bike. You've got to get used to the brakes, which were completely different than mine. There was ABS, but they weren't as responsive as mine. But I suppose with mine being a super bike and I've got the bigger double pot rotor brakes to obviously slow it down at speed, these were a little bit spongy. But again, absolutely fine. What I did find on this bike is I very rarely needed to use the pat brake, whereas on my bike I have to use the pat brake quite a bit just to settle the back of the bike down because it's quite squirmy, and I think that's to do with the weight distribution with the engine being further on my bike, and whereas this one being a more lower centre of gravity, I didn't find it was very squirrely on the brakes. It was very squirrely on the road though. As I mentioned, the US highways tend to have a lot of seams in them, and those seams definitely seem to not be set out well for bikers. I had to be also very careful as well going through the town centre, because at this point I was completely lost. I had no idea where I was going. I had no sat nav, so I had to make sure that I was staying as close to Andy as possible, or else if I lost him then that could have been interesting. I'm sure I would have figured it out, and one thing I didn't do, which I potentially should have done, was check the map beforehand, but you live and learn. So this video's coming to an end. Thanks guys for persevering with it, and I will talk to you all on the next video.
Okay, well I'm back in the room. So today was going out for the bike ride, and I'll put some footage in and some pictures of the actual ride itself. The weather was horrendous. It was absolutely tipping it down for most of the way. So given the choice, I probably wouldn't have done it, but I'd already hired the bike and, I wanted to do it. First time I've ridden a big bike like that, and it was interesting. I've kind of thought about that for quite a while and wondered what they're like, and not for me. I wouldn't go out and buy one now after that experience. Definitely a very weird and unique way of riding them. quite heavy, quite similar to mine in the fact that they're heavy, but very easy to ride once I got used to it. And you know, when I was in the shop, and I kind of said to the woman who was checking me in, I was a little bit nervous and apprehensive. I mean, it's fine to admit that, because I was actually nervous about doing it. And she said, you know, hop on, have a feel of it. I hopped on and it was so well balanced. I didn't think I'd have any issues with it, and I didn't. Following the guys in the car, especially guys who haven't ridden bikes, yeah, it was definitely interesting. I had to stop at one point and say, look, we're going too fast, I can't see. My visor kept steaming up. There was a very hairy moment where I almost went into oncoming traffic, and that was definitely because I was going too fast down the hills in the rain and couldn't see out the visor at all. So the bend just appeared, and yeah, but luckily all was good, all was well. Once I kind of said, look, I need to slow down, I started going at my own pace, because I didn't know where I was actually going. That's the problem. I didn't have any sat nav, I didn't have a clue where I was going. So yeah, I needed to follow somebody. But it was good, it was a really good experience. We didn't get to go and do the trail road, which I wanted to do. We just went up to the Stanley Hotel. I was absolutely frozen. I was wearing jeans, my boots were leaking, basically I was wet up to the knee. With the boots. I was freezing cold. I actually put a jumper on underneath my jacket for the way back after learning that, no, I need to sort something out. But it was fun. So the guys have just come in, the rest of the people from my ops meeting this week. I'm going to go and meet up with them now and have a beer, and a couple more are coming in later on, and then we'll go and get something to eat.